Mental disorders affect millions of Chinese citizens. But with a chronic lack of support, is this a social time bomb threatening to leave victims and broken families in its wake? 101 East at this time on Al Jazeera.
The immediate departure of Muammar Gaddafi within 72 hours.
Negotiating an exit, Libya's opposition says Gaddafi will not be prosecuted at home if he steps down in the next 3 days. It's 1700 GMT. I'm Lauren Taylor. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also on the programme, intense fighting in Ras Lanuf, a key Libyan oil terminal, amid reports of several airstrikes. Violence breaks out in a Yemeni prison as the anti-government uprising continues throughout the country. And concerns over who's actually benefiting from Afghanistan's Cash for Work programme. Hello, stop the bombing and leave within 72 hours. In return, Gaddafi will not face prosecution at home. That's the message to Colonel Gaddafi from the head of the National Libyan Council. Mustafa Abdul Jalil has told Al Jazeera the Libyan leader must go to prevent further bloodshed. Elsewhere in Libya, there are more developments. Reports that Gaddafi's tanks and warplanes are bombarding the town of Zawiya outside the capital, Tripoli. Libyan state television has shown pictures of the military in what it says is the recaptured town, but the rebels say they're still inside the city. Well, moving over now to Bin Jawad, state television showed this footage of people it says were brainwashed into joining the rebels against Colonel Gaddafi. And in Ras Lanuf, witnesses have talked of as many as 6 airstrikes. Reports suggest that residents are leaving in a hurry. We'll have more on the fighting in a moment, but first Lawrence Lee talks about the opposition's offer to Muammar Gaddafi.
For a man with such a strong line in bombast and exaggeration, the suggestion of Gaddafi making a deal on the quiet which would allow him to escape Libya unscathed is startling. It's claimed he raised the suggestion on Sunday when opposition forces were on the road to Sirte, his hometown, and before the Libyan army had retaken the town of Bin Jawad and pushed the rebels back. According to Al Jazeera's sources in Libya, Gaddafi sent this man, a former prime minister who's from Benghazi, as his envoy to the shadow government there, with an offer which would end the violence. It seems his main demands were aimed less at ensuring the future of the country and more to make sure that he and his family could continue living in luxury. So it's alleged that Gaddafi wanted assurances that he wouldn't be prosecuted for crimes against humanity, that he and his family would be able to leave to a country of his choosing, and that he would retain assets, many of which have been seized in countries from Europe to Japan. The message back from Benghazi to Gaddafi was equally specific: end the bombing and get out of Libya within 72 hours.
We see no objection in ending bloodshed among the Libyans in return for 2 key demands. First, Muammar Gaddafi stopping air and inland bombardment of Zawiya, Misrata and Ras Lanuf. Second, his immediate departure within 72 hours. And in return, we guarantee that he will not be prosecuted domestically.
What prompted Gaddafi to fold in this way is unclear, since his troops have been gaining ground. Perhaps as well as fears about prosecution, he's becoming concerned about the growing pressure from the international community to raise the threat of a military response.
We've got NATO, as we speak, consulting in Brussels around a wide range of potential options, including potential military options, in response to the violence that continues to take place inside of Libya.
There may be many ordinary people in Benghazi who see Gaddafi's demands as outrageous, and perhaps the authorities too. But equally, if Gaddafi were to leave the country, they could surely still claim an historic victory, and the authorities in Benghazi are certainly concerned about saving lives as well. Inevitably, Libyan state TV has denied an offer even being made. The next move now surely belongs to Gaddafi. One final point: how Gaddafi's own soldiers feel about the prospect of being abandoned may prove interesting as well. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Correspondent Hoda Abdelhamid joins us now live from Benghazi, the seat of the uprising in the east. So, Hoda, this talk of a possible deal, it's not as straightforward as that, is it?
No, it's absolutely not straightforward, and you're hearing really two opposite stories coming out of the same National Council. Now, the head of the National Council, the former Justice Minister, says that there had been indirect talks with people from Libya, and from Tripoli rather, and if these people had actually talked, it's because they were given the green light by the regime in Tripoli. Now, according to those talks, there's some sort of proposal by which Gaddafi was trying to find himself an honorable exit, was trying to get some guarantees that neither him nor his family would be prosecuted, and that not all of his assets would be frozen once he leaves the leadership of this country and he relocates to another country. Now, the spokesman of the National Council denies any of that. He actually says none of that has ever happened. He does say that no one actually can bargain over the blood spilled during the 42 years of Gaddafi's leadership, that no one can bargain over the money that is owed to the Libyan people. So basically he's undermining whatever the Justice Minister says. So there's a very chaotic picture coming out here in Benghazi, and certainly a picture that could backfire in the face of the National Council.
Indeed, and obviously from the Gaddafi camp there was initially a sort of denial that they were involved in any kind of negotiations. Just to go back to the fighting for a moment, is your impression that the momentum on the side of the opposition has lulled a bit, or how do you assess it?
Well, I think rather than a momentum lulling, there is a realization that you can't keep on pushing towards the West under the current condition and under the current structure. Now, this whole, let's say, territorial push has been led so far by these volunteers, who are people who have no experience whatsoever in warfare, very little experience in handling heavy weapons like anti-aircraft guns, and who have very little experience of being in the field. They had been lucky so far, but there is a realization, especially among the military command council that has formed here in Benghazi, that you can't continue like that, that the more you approach Sirte, which is considered really a stronghold of Gaddafi, not only because that's where he resides most of the time, but that's also where he has his more elite forces that are based there. It's a very, very fortified city, and the more you approach there, the less you'll be able to have any kind of gains, and the more there's going to be damage inflicted on the rebels. So I think at this stage, what you're seeing is certainly a will by the military command to try to regroup everyone around Ras Lanouf, restructure them, and then try to push forward.
Okay, Hoda, thank you very much indeed. Hoda Abdelhamid live for us in Benghazi. Well, meanwhile, the town of Ras Lanouf that Hoda was just talking about there's been intense fighting. The city is a key oil terminal. Witnesses say they saw several airstrikes. Gerald Tan reports.
The latest flashpoint in the Libyan uprising. Intense gunfire in the port city